Hello and welcome to the special edition of The Stack, where we look back in the year with some of our best interviews. On today's show, we celebrate 20 years of Fantastic Man. We speak with the editor-in-chief of Popeye and much more. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show with my conversation with the editor-in-chief of The Cut, Lindsay Peoples. The online publication under the umbrella of New York Magazine now has its own print edition.
I think that we're always looking for, what is hiding in plain sight as far as the conversations around style. I think that, we obviously participate in the fashion industry. I go to shows. I'm about to leave soon for the shows in Europe. And I think that, we have great relationships with the brands and industry, et cetera. But I think we're very concerned and focused on how does that trickle down and matter to someone who doesn't have a purview into fashion and doesn't really know all of these things. And so I think that you see that come to life in a lot of different ways, right? So in the issue, Chantel Fernandez, one of our great features writers, she did a reported piece on Keats and like the popularity around this brand that, has ads everywhere. You get on Instagram, you're always being served a Keats ad. And what does that mean for the state of everybody's talking about quality over quantity and they're selling cashmere and caviar at the same time? But I think for us, it's like having a lot of those conversations is so key because it is industry, but it also is part of, the decision making and how everyone chooses how they get dressed every day and what brands they buy and what designers they interact with. There's so many interesting characters in fashion that we like to talk about and highlight, but also we recently relaunched a lot of our beauty columns and started a few new ones. And so I think that conversation, just beauty has been, I think, taken over a lot of fashion conversations as well. There's, a million celebrities with beauty brands at this point. And so we want to also just engage in that to say, we want to be able to be an authority in those spaces, to try the products, to say this is worth your money or this isn't, to be able to talk about aging in a responsible way. And I think that fashion overall has always been important to us, but I think that we've just now done so much, both Cut and New York Mag, to really have an authority in the space.
You mentioned, of course, the European fashion shows, Paris Fashion Week is coming out very soon. And I wonder, is there a plan for, The Cut and New York Magazine as well, perhaps to expand a little bit here in Europe? I mean, I certainly think there is a market here for you.
It's something that I've thought about for a long time. And I do think that it's something that I would be definitely open to. I always look at the comments, we always laugh at the office that, we read the comments and whether they're good or bad or they're just really tearing us down, I take it as good feedback. And just the fact that people are really engaged with The Cut. It's not a passive publication. It really is a publication that is engaged with its readers. And so it's not a simple just scroll past it. We don't care about this. We do really get people passionate telling us what they feel about The Cut and New York Magazine at large. And so it's something that I've definitely thought about. And I want to make sure that we're always in connection and have a closeness with our reader. And so it's something that I'm simmering on it.
That's very good to hear as a fan here. And going back to the issue that is out now in the newsstands, the print edition of The Cut, I mean, there are 3 covers and you literally chose the 3 hottest pop stars in the planet right now: Doechii, Bad Bunny, and Rosé. I mean, it's incredible. Very different styles, but they're cool, right?
Very cool. I think for me, though, it is that, so much of what we do is rooted in how can we be inclusive and diverse in this space, but then also do things that are really unexpected, do things that people wouldn't, normally do for a fashion issue, or that they would only kind of go in one way, and we wanted to present the reader with something different. And so I really love that we're able to spend a lot of time on this issue in the way of finding the right talent, and the talent that I think is also just super vocal and making waves in a different way. And it's been exciting to kind of see this come together, and we're already thinking about what we're going to do for September.
Oh, and I look forward. And how do you work with David Haskell? I remember talking to him, I think it was 2019. So it's been a while, but he was a lovely guy to chat to. What's your relation with him?
Yeah, I mean, he's the best. And I think that I'm really, really fortunate to be able to look up to him, but also just be able to work with him. And he's obviously incredibly intelligent, and the magazine does just the best work. But I really, he's really been formative in helping me kind of figure out what the brand DNA of the cut is and how we continue to build that audience and how we continue to grow the brand in a way that is sustainable. I think oftentimes, there's always a new trend in media. I remember, many years ago, when people were like, pivot to video, pivot to podcasts, all the things. And he's been such a supporter of the cut, but also a supporter and just, I think, supporter of me just figuring out the ways in which we want to expand that actually feel right and intentional and not just, let's just grow.
One article that I cannot wait because I am, I like to wait for my print edition to arrive is the astrology one. I think, and I think that's why I like the cut as well, because you guys know how to have fun as well.
Yes.
There are serious topics, but you're not po-faced, if I may say that.
Yeah. I think it's always a balance for us. And I think, when we make these issues, but also I think every day on the site, I want it to be a journey for the reader. I don't want them to feel like it's one note. We are constantly updating the homepage. Our site is definitely alive, and I want it to feel that way. But then I also want the print issue to also feel that way. And there'd be things that you may read right away. And then there may be things that you read, a few days later, or, when you're about to go on a trip and you have some time at the airport. I want it to feel like it's actually, you're going on an adventure with the reader. And so I like to mix it up. And, we have some new rubrics in this, and we'll try some for September, but I don't want it to just be strictly what you usually get from a typical fashion magazine.
Thank you very much, Lindsay from The Cut. And now we celebrate 20 years of one of my favorite publications, The Incredible Fantastic Man. It was a pleasure talking with Gert Jonkers about it.
We've always sort of admired clothes more than we've admired fashion. I see it at home for myself. It's like I'm actually struggling with the amount of clothes I have at the moment because I love clothes so much. And I'm not, I'm not a terrible fashion victim, and I don't buy a lot of clothes, but I never get rid of anything. I think if a pair of Dries van Noten jeans was nice 12 years ago, it's actually still nice. And even though weirdly sometimes the cut really gets out of fashion, and that's the moment where I sort of put it in my storage, but it'll probably come back in 5 or 10 years time. So yes, we like clothes, but then I really think Fantastic Man also likes people. I think that's for me still the main basis for the magazine. I think, one of my favorite stories in this issue is the story of the man in seat 61, which is this website. Do you know the website? It's this man from Britain who has a website about train travel, train travel everywhere. And it's incredibly detailed. I actually used it last week because I went from Amsterdam to Milan, and you type that in, and it comes with all the different possibilities of getting from Amsterdam to Milan in 17 hours or 13 hours or 12 hours, and tells you exactly where you can get a sandwich, on which train there is hot coffee, or whether there is an actual restaurant, or which transfer is too short. And it's a beautiful story that it's also always very important to us to find these people that are just fascinating and have nothing to do with fashion.
Absolutely. I think that also brings the magic of the magazine. So was there any kind of particularly issue that you love it and you keep it as, I was telling you before the interview that the Tom Ford one was my very first Fantastic Man. So I'll always remember that one, and the David Beckham one, which is the one I was working with you guys in Amsterdam. Is there a special one, or you're someone who always likes to look at the future?
No, there are issues that I love. I mean, I love the one with Helmut Lang on the cover.
Oh,
I
yes.
thought that was great. But then I also love the one with Brian Ferry on the cover, just because when I was young, when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, actually my first album that I ever bought was Let's Stick Together from Brian Ferry. And Brian Ferry was my hero as a child. So to have him on the cover was incredible. There's an amazing cover of Jonathan Anderson that we did for issue number 21, I think. It's also very dear to me. So there are a lot of issues. It's easier to think about the past than about the future, obviously, because how are we gonna top this doorstopper of an issue? I don't know yet, but we're slowly starting to think about that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I wonder if there are any highlights of this issue. Of course, we're talking about the 10 covers, so there's plenty of profiles to read. But I wonder if there's anything else. I mean, did you decide to look back at the history, some of your contributors, some like a best of type of thing?
Well, we tried not to make it too nostalgic, this issue, because that
Mm,
would have been quite easy to do. But I think, in a way, the only really nostalgic story inside this issue is the fact that Rupert Everett makes a
mm,
return in the issue. But we did make a little supplement, which is 20 dream covers, and it sort of looks at all the covers we didn't have in the past. Because we only chose one very often, and there was often another story or another image of the same cover story that we thought could also have been a very nice cover. So through this booklet, that's a supplement, we're also telling the history of the 20 years a little bit, because we're looking back at, Tom Brown in the first issue, or Luca Guadagnino, or Shane Oliver. So it's a little bit of a retelling of our history.
Oh, that's perfect. A collector's thing for sure. What about the readers? Do you feel have they changed comparing 2005 and 2025? Perhaps I wonder if you got like a younger readership, or do you feel you kept quite constant in a way?
I feel like we've stayed quite constant, but I'm happy to discover that young people read the magazine. I mean, it'd be scary if the same readers that we had 20 years ago are still the readers, meaning they're all 20 years older. I mean, that would be, a lot of them, I'm 20 years older, you're 20 years older,
Yes.
everybody's 20 years older, but I'm really pleased with the sort of people that contact us, because they want to intern for us, or they want to do something for us, or they want to write for us. And that sort of like encourages me that there is a constant stream of new readers.
And with Fantastic Man, you see amazing, all the top brands basically are advertising with you. What's your relationship with the brands? So clearly there's a level of trust in there because, we talk here on the stack, the world have changed for many magazines. They have less advertising now. There's challenges, but at least from a reader, I don't see that with Fantastic Man.
No, I think there is trust. I mean, maybe part of the trust is the fact that we already do it for 20 years.
Mm,
So, and indeed, I think we are quite consistent, even though we, like to surprise ourselves and like to surprise the people around us sometimes. I think ultimately we're consistent. So I do think brands trust that. I think we've also always been very clear that we do want to be independent from even the people that we work with. And so we're always also quite open about that there are limits to what we can do in commercial partnerships. And, selling our soul isn't really what we're looking at. So I think that we have clear boundaries what we do, and I think that's sort of respected.
Now, a fashion question, because I do like to follow your style. I love your orange trousers. Can you tell me where they're from?
Yeah, they're Prada. They're the Linea
Beautiful.
Rossa from Prada.
They're beautiful.
And I wore them. I've had them for a while actually, and it was difficult pulling them off. In sort of like when do I wear them? And they're very thin. Even on a summer day, they're quite cold. I hadn't worn them this winter, and I pulled them out last week to big success, I must say. And it just makes you realize that it's nice to wear a sort of statement piece sometimes.
Thank you as always, Gert, and I look forward to see what Fantastic Man will be doing in 2026. And now to a title that made me very happy this year, Town and Country. It was a pleasure to speak with Stelline Volans, their editor-in-chief and also editorial and brand director for Elle Decor.
Next year is a very big anniversary for us, which I sort of thought this morning we better start planning for. And I love it because of that, but also because of all that allows us to do with it. So when you have a heritage brand like Town and Country, and as much as it is a media brand, it is a luxury heritage brand. And that's how really we approach everything we do. And when you have a heritage brand, you need to honor who you are, understand who you are, but also allow that to evolve in a way that both pushes you forward, but connects to the past, but always moves ahead. And I think understanding what Town and Country is at its core allows us to go pretty far with it. I meet and write about so many luxury heritage brands. And when new leadership comes in, I always remind them that you can go quite far as long as you can thread it back, even if it's only in your own mind. If you know that this is actually a part of your brand, you can go pretty far and throw a lot of curveballs, which is essential with a heritage brand. You want to continue to surprise your clients or your readers, and you also need to keep surprising yourself.
And the best cover lines in business as well, they're really cool. I mean, I have the latest issue in my hands. May issue, death becomes hair, Garbo at the door. I mean, it's really, and I think those things are very important. I think that the cover is still very important, right? Because subscription is important, but you want the person in the newsstand or in the airport to go and grab it, right?
Yes. So when I said that I think of Town and Country as a luxury brand, I think of the print magazine as a luxury product. And the same way Hermes or Bottega looks at every stitch and makes sure, the closure is interesting and beautifully made, every stitch and every bit of our print magazine has to offer something to the reader. And that begins with the cover lines. That is your opening line to the reader, whether it is a subscriber and the magazine comes to their house and they need to immediately know, how to avoid friends, but still read their Substack, or it's someone at the airport about to board a 9-hour flight thinking these cover lines all sound like someone I would want to sit next to at a dinner party. And it creates a tone and a point of view from the moment you see the magazine. And for me, that is an essential moment to connect to your loyal reader or also to bring in new readers. And the truth is, Town and Country has a great tradition of cover lines. If you, right across from my office is our archive room. And if you look at the cover lines, especially in the 60s and early 70s, they were way more off the wall than even what we do. And I admit sometimes our cover lines are a bit unhinged, but as we like to say, isn't that the point? And so knowing what the tone was allowed us to think about what it should be right now. And there is joy in making this magazine. And for me, that is essential to this brand, but also to the experience the reader has when they pick up the print product. I don't love to think about the term ROI, but the truth is when someone sits down with Town and Country, I want to make sure they feel like they made a good investment of their time, of their money, and we are having a great and engaged conversation with them.
Another thing I would like to ask is about the covers. Your usage of color is amazing because sometimes I generally go to the newsstand. I feel a little bit bored looking at the covers. I'm not necessarily just talking about the content, but there is something quite special. In the latest issue, again, I love the tones of green. I know there's a lot about emeralds as well, so I'm sure it's kind of connected. But the issue before, it was very tropical. Town and Country was written in pink. How important is that kind of playing around with the design, with the colors for you?
One of the most important elements of any editor's job for me is, of course, to listen. So, there's always a sense of people are all worried about this. And then I'm at dinner parties and no one is talking about that. So sometimes what we think people are concerned about is not what they're actually concerned about. So listening is key, but also you need to constantly remind yourself that you are also a reader and consumer of media. What stops you when I'm at the airport, which, I frequently am, when I go to pick up the magazines for my flight, which covers stand out to me? Which cover lines stand out to me? And when we're choosing things, again, every single element of the print product needs to be considered. It is a luxury product. And so the cover logo, the background, it all needs to, first of all, telegraph the town and country universe, which, you look at Hannah Einbinder on this cover, and there is sort of this beautiful blue pool that she's in. Yes, there are emeralds. There is a sense of a perfect spring or summer day, and she's wearing a one-of-a-kind Tiffany emeralds to the beach or the pool, which is appropriately town and country absurd, which I love.
Thank you, Stellan, and I actually became a subscriber of Town and Country this year. And finally, a very special interview. My colleague Ryuma Takahashi spoke with Yuji Mashida, editor-in-chief of Japanese men's title Popeye.
Popeye is a Japanese men's fashion magazine published by Magazine House. This magazine, which will celebrate its 50th anniversary next year, has had a major influence on Japan's fashion and cultural scene for decades. At the same time, it's a magazine that has evolved alongside with the journey of Japan's fashion culture scene. To understand what kind of magazine Popeye really is, and why it attracts so many young Japanese people, I spoke with Popeye's editor-in-chief, Yuji Machida.
I heard that the founding editor was the first person to bring down vest culture to Japan. So in the past, I think Popeye was a medium that introduced American West Coast and European culture to Japan. Now we're more focused on creating the magazine around Tokyo culture.
What symbolizes recent Popeye issues is the Tokyo special feature, Hello Tokyo, 僕の東京探訪記 Hello Tokyo, My Tokyo Exploration Diary, published in May 2025. It introduces how various creators and Popeye writers walk around and enjoy Tokyo. The characteristic of this feature is that it presents our familiar Tokyo from a slightly different and deeper perspective, yet at the same time with a pop and light-hearted viewpoint. Machida-san says that Popeye puts together a Tokyo special once in a year as a muscle training for editors. So, what exactly is Popeye's angle?
I think it's good to know what kind of new people are emerging in our own city and what they're doing. So we create a Tokyo special every year. We usually work with people who have good taste in Tokyo, so we start our own research from word of mouth from those kinds of people. And Popeye's angle is really based on our intuition, but I think you can see in the subtitle that it says Magazine for City Boys, and we're conscious of whether our content is information that city boys need.
True to its subtitle, Magazine for City Boys, Popeye consistently targets young readers. Machida-san said 25 years old men made up the largest readership demographic. This is exemplified by the special features of Popeye. 20歳の時何をしていたか? What were you doing when you were 20 years old? In this series, the celebrities and contributors look back on their past and share with young readers what kind of life they were living and what thoughts they had when they were 20 years old. It's a series that only Popeye can do.
I feel like we're having a conversation with our readers. We're at the same eye level as them. I think that shows in how we write our articles too. We want to be a magazine that readers can enjoy with the kind of language you're used to talking with close friends at school.
So, what's the secret to creating a magazine that readers can feel close to?
Recently, when our first editor-in-chief passed away, I collected his words and distributed them to everyone in our editorial team. He had written something like, "Editorial meetings are meaningless, so let's quit them." So I've also stopped doing it, and I ask each editorial staff member individually about what they're interested in. Looking at young people these days, I think they have a light attitude and easily cross genre boundaries. So I think it would be good if the magazine had a bit more lightness too. I want to make our magazine like a container where everyone in the editorial team can freely include whatever they're interested in right now. This magazine isn't made with any marketing considerations at all, so we should always have editors and writers with really good taste, and I personally think the editorial staff should keep rotating too.
Popeye has been leading Japan and Tokyo fashion and culture scene from the perspective of young city boy for almost 50 years. I think because they share the same viewpoint with them, they've been able to sensitively capture Tokyo's constantly changing fashion culture scene. The September 2024 issue introduced Japan's current authentic vintage clothing scene with the title Digging Secondhand Finds. How does Popeye's editor-in-chief view Japan's recent fashion scene?
I think fashion trends in Japan recently have become harder to grasp. I think there are fewer people into trad-style fashion compared to 10 years ago. On the other hand, street-style fashion is making a comeback in Harajuku and Yura Harajuku areas. Also, there are young people who are interested in Korean fashion brands. Second-hand clothing is overwhelmingly popular now. But as those clear single trends are disappearing now, how to capture trends is quite a difficult problem. So in the end, I feel like Popeye should be made from things around us. Still, I don't think Popeye can stay the same city boys that everyone imagines forever, as it will change. I think magazines should change with each era.
Popeye has changed with Tokyo's cultural transitions through the ages. However, Japanese print magazine industry, including Popeye, stand at the crossroad in the wave of digitalization. The cover of Popeye's June 2025 issue, 大人になるって悪くない, Being adult isn't so bad, even includes the subtitle, いくつになっても成長しないシティボーイたちへ, to city boys who never grow up no matter how old they get. How does Popeye itself view the changes in the magazine industry in Japan?
I think in Japan, paper magazines probably sell overwhelmingly better than digital versions. Japan has this unique distribution system, like publishing distributors that have power between publishers and bookstores, and a resale price maintenance system where publishers can set retail prices for magazines. Because of this, I think there are more bookstores compared to overseas. When I go abroad and look at magazine stands, they've gotten thinner, and there's definitely a sense that print magazines are declining. I hear that overseas subscriptions are more common, but in Japan, subscriptions aren't very popular. Most people buy at bookstores, and I think that's a very good thing. There's a really good small bookstore in my neighborhood too, but if places like that disappear, there won't be places in town to pick up culture.
On the other hand, Machida-san says he doesn't think about the future of magazines, and even says it's nonsense to think about it 10 years from now.
If technology for computers and smartphones advances and apps come out that let you read magazine content in more enjoyable or convenient ways, things might change. I'm thinking of adapting as we go. There might be environmental issues, but I kind of want people to read magazines and throw them away more. It might be nice for people to keep them in their rooms, but I really want them to be more accessible. On these production sides too, I want to make it a magazine where we can casually include what we think, what we consider, and what we want to convey.
気軽に入れていけるような雑誌にしたいなっていうふうには思うかな。
And what a pleasure to have Popeye on the stack this year. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Jewers. Thank you very much for listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. You can always drop me a line on fb@monocle.com. You've been listening to The Stack. It's goodbye from me.